Welcome everyone to today's webinar. This is Andrew McDonald from the PAC Global team. We'll wait just about a minute while everyone joins and gets settled. All righty. Well, hello everyone. This is Andrew McDonald from PAC Global. Thank you very much for making time to join us today as we focus on a tool developed by PAC Global called PIP360, or Packaging Innovation Pathway 360. And in particular, our focus today on the improvements associated with version 2 of the tool. So we'll lead into the main event with some introductions, starting with PAC Global, or PAC for short. PAC, as many of you know, is a long-standing nonprofit industry association with members across the packaging value chain and increasingly from around the world. Education and training are central to PAC, and we offer a variety of activities like this one today for the packaging community to connect and learn together. PAC Next is one of the ways we do this. And you can go to next slide, Lindsay. Yours truly, I quarterback our PAC Next team, which is a 5-member team that offers a wealth of experience, resources, and practical advice related to taking action and making decisions with respect to packaging sustainability and circularity, from design all the way through to end-of-life considerations. Along with moderating PAC Next webinars, I co-teach with colleague Dan Lance our packaging circularity course and our golden design rules training for plastic packaging. Speaking of which, as you see before you, here are our PAC Next activities for the balance of our now quickly evaporating 2023. So we've got what will prove to be a really interesting tour next week. I believe there's still a couple of spots left, so please reach out to Lindsay Cooper at PAC if you're interested. Got a very good course coming up at the end of the month, a holistic course on plastic packaging. And then on December 6th, our final golden design rules training for the year. So here's our format for today. We're going to have a demo of PIP360, again, focused on version 2, the characteristics of version 2. We're going to hear from a couple of active users of PIP360, and then we want to leave a solid 15 or 20 minutes for Q&A. So please use the Q&A box through the presentations. Fill it up. Let's put Dan, Theo, and Lucas to work. And again, we'll have a moderated panel of questions at the end. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce our 3 presenters of the day. First up, Dan Lance. Dan is co-director with Alan Blake of our PAC Next program. Dan has 30+ years of experience in end-of-life materials management. Dan worked with Stewardship Ontario in the design of Ontario's Blue Box program and in the design and operation of British Columbia's extended producer responsibility-based recycling program. Dan is recognized by the Consumer Goods Forum as a technical expert for the Golden Design Rules and is a technical advisor to the Canada Plastics Pact. Dan has specialist knowledge of EPR and stewardship, package design optimization, and recycling facility design and operation. Dan works as a strategic consultant to both industry associations and private sector clients along the packaging supply chain. Theo Bovin. Theo is a professional engineer with 35 years of experience in manufacturing and design of flexible packaging. Theo is Director for Product Innovation, Sustainability, and Regulatory Compliance for Hood Packaging's Plastics Division. Theo offers technical expertise in plastic, paper, cellulose, and polywoven materials. He's a member of ASTM committees for packaging and plastics, and we're very grateful, co-chairs our PAC Next Leadership Council. And rounding out our presenter team for today is Lucas Martinovic. Lucas grew up around the packaging industry and has always had a passion for its impact on our planet. Starting with a background in economics and having worked in several manufacturing roles over the years, Lucas is now the sustainability manager for Silgan Plastics, which produces sustainable rigid plastic packaging throughout North America. Lucas collaborates with all Silgan North American operations to identify and implement sustainability improvement projects for their plants and products. Like Theo, Lucas has been involved with PIP360 development since the early stages and is also a member of our PAC Next Leadership Council. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Dan Lance, to give you a thorough demonstration of PIP360 version 2. Over to you, Dan.
Thank you very much, Andrew. Okay, I'm going to share screen. Make sure it's that one. Andrew, have I got the PIP360 model on the screen?
Yes, indeed.
Awesome. Thank you. Okay, folks, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world today. Special shout out I've got to give to, I know Theo and Lucas are going to be presenting, but I got to give a special shout out. Those two gentlemen have been very much instrumental in the final product that was put out. They were a great asset to me, just ground truthing, checking, and even providing parts of the list of materials we put into the model. So I really do have to thank them for all of their thing. And they're also are very early adopters of the PIP360 model. And so again, another shout out to them for that. So thank you very much to Theo and Lucas. So with that, I'd like to get right into it. The PIP360, this is V2. So if you go to our website, I think it's going to be officially launched this week, if I'm not mistaken, Andrew. And so you should see a V2 for it. If you get a V and a V1 and V2, or just PIP360 and PIP360 V2, make sure you use the V2. So when you do that, it's going to open up to this page, and ignore Crow's Nest Environmental. That's just my company. It goes by your email address. So the first thing you want to do is we're going to add products, and I'm going to go through a stepwise process. We're going to start with a multi-material, multi-laminated plastic pouch. I'm going to move to a mono pouch, and then I'm going to put recycled in a pouch, and I'm going to show you how things move forward. Version 2 has a lot of new features, particularly the list of materials that we've now got from about 35 to 69 materials that you can choose from. So it's much more discrete. The second thing is that we've incorporated new elements into the scoring, particularly packaging intensity, which if you're following what's going on in EPR in the world, for example, in Oregon, they want packaging intensity included in the fee structure. So it's becoming more critical. So that wasn't in V1, it's now in V2. V2 as well, not included in the scoring, but it is an added feature. Is we provide the WARM, the waste reduction model from the US EPA, calculation of GHG emissions. Now you're going, it's Canadian, but you're using US. Well, that's because there isn't a Canadian model for calculating GHG emissions. So we're using it as a surrogate. It's pretty good. It's getting lots of attention, and you'll see it. I'll show it to you. The next thing we also include is this is very closely tied to the Golden Design Rules, being in line with what CPP is doing. And so what we do is we'll tell you immediately with your package whether you're on-site or off-site with the Golden Design Rules. And if you are off-site, where you need to improve. That's all included in the report card. And finally, we also include what your estimated EPR fees are by province across Canada. So that's all new. Now, EPR fees and GHG emissions are not part of the evaluation of the scores. or determination of the score, sorry. So you go in and you add a product. And so I'm just going to make one up here. So SKU, and the product name is Theo and Lucas. What the heck just happened there? Sorry, folks. Sorry about that. Theo and Lucas's frozen strawberries. And by the way, this is not Theo and Lucas's, but frozen strawberries is a product in the market that has recently moved from multi-material to mono. So it is a real world example that's only happened and changed in the last 6 months. So it's a really good one to look at. So then the next, what you do is you pull down your product segment. In this case, it's food non-fresh. Food fresh is from your produce or your meat or dairy, for example. And then we go frozen food, product family. So we're going to say this is a 1 pound package, 454 grams. So you put in that. So you can do count grams, kilograms, liters, milligrams, or milliliters. If you put it in grams, it's great. Otherwise, there's a lot of stuff in the background. It will do it, but product intensity is very critically important in terms of your score. So we put in the package weight in grams. So we put in the size of the product in grams, and you'll get a nice packaging intensity calculation. So that's it. So that now you've got your product in here. Measurements are in metric. So you add the package. So the package name description, it's I'm just going to do short form because we haven't got a lot of time. Multi-material, multi-laminated plastic pouch, right? So that's the package name and package for strawberries. It's it's the current package that's in the marketplace. We're going to say recyclable. Now you have a choice of scoring as compostable, recyclable, combination of recyclable and compostable. That's a new addition in version 2. We put that in because of we have to have a shout out to Club Coffee because they produced a product that's both compostable and recyclable on the shelf. The recyclable part's the box, the compostable is the pod, of course, and also we can score reusable packaging. So in this case, we're going to say it's recyclable. Now, everybody's going to imagine your first question is, but multi-material, multi-laminated pouches are not recyclable. No, but this is a circularity tool. So recycling is only part of it, right? It's what the package is made out of and how it fits within the system, the circular economy. So put in that it's recyclable. The model takes care of recyclability and the recycling rates. So don't worry about that. And just so you know, believe it or not, Quebec actually reports recycling rates for multi-material, multi-laminated pouches. So anyhow, so it's not a return package. We don't have any product notes. So we're going to add a component. Component name is the multi-material, multi-laminated pouch. The material category is plastic. You notice that there's lots of choices: printed paper, paper packaging, plastic packaging, steel, aluminum, glass, and other, right? And deposit. So we're going to do plastic packaging. And then, as I mentioned, there are a lot more categories. There are now 36 plastics categories. Before, I think we had about 15. And we go down, and it's very comprehensive now, right down to choosing. You can even choose black plastic as opposed to, natural color or colored plastics. So in this case, just going through, we're looking at multi-material, multi-laminated pouches, right? Most likely this package, just so you know, is PET on the outside and polyethylene on the inside, or polypropylene on the inside. So we've got one unit. Oh, it's the primary package component, right? It's the bag. It's the primary component. If you had a multi-component package, so say like a cereal box is even 2 components. So you would have the package, the cereal is in the plastic pouch, and then the box is the secondary packaging element, right? So the weight of the plastic pouch, we're going to say is 16 grams, right? The percentage recycled content is 0. FSC, FSFI, that is the first version of the model. We were scoring and giving credit for bio-based fiber, period. However, research between version 1 and version 2 found out there was a major packaging producer that was using less than stellar sources of fiber. And I won't go into detail, but with that, PAC looked at it and said, well, we can't be giving credit for somebody that's, taking poor sources of fiber. So therefore, we're now going to have to add a certification of the fiber source before we're going to give credit for it for a circularity model. So in this case, though, it's plastic, so it's 0. There's no bio-based plastic. This does not mean compostable. It means biologically sourced. So think of the old Dasani water bottle, which was part of it was bio-based, right? So that's what we're talking about, is biologically sourced plastic element, right, to produce part of the package. So in this case, it's 0. And in this, we're going to say, yes, there is barriers. Typically, with fruits and vegetables and that, there needs to be a barrier layer in it for oxygen. And so we're going to say it's got a 5% barrier layer on the inside. Typically, it would be something like EVOH. And so we're going to say 5%. So you save it. And that's it for this package. Now, if you had another component, say there was a paper label on the outside, you would add the component, you put the paper label on. If you had a I don't know. In this case, for pouches, it's pretty straightforward, right? If this was the pouch inside a cereal box, you would add a component and then put the cereal box on the outside, just so you know. But that's it. So that's how long it takes to add a package. When you think about it, without the description that I'm providing, you can do a package in less than 5 minutes, which is one of the things we wanted about PIP360, was to create something that's very simple to use but provides a lot of information. So that's it. We're done. And so we're going to create a score. Now you get a warning that says, are you sure? Is there nothing left? Because once you've created the score, you can't go back, right? And so we say, nope, we're done. I can't think of anything else. It's got the right description and everything, so continue. So there you go. There's your score for a multi-material, multi-laminated plastic pouch for strawberries with no recycled content and no bio-based. Gets a whole 37. This is out of 360. PIP360. So if you're doing really well, you can, there are packages in the marketplace that will get you a score over 330. So it's not like you can't get to 360. And in fact, if I scored, for example, corrugated for British Columbia with 100% recycled content, it would score 360, just so you know, right? Because they say that the recycling rate for corrugated in BC is 100%. So anyhow, you can see your current score is 37. It gives you a number of things you can do to increase your packaging score, reduce your packaging weight, increase the use of recycled content, or increase bio-based. Now, the big thing is down here is it says Golden Design Rules. Oh, hold on. It's got a flag for you. Golden Design Rule number 6, increase recycling value in flexible consumer packaging. That's what Golden Design Rule 6 is. It says using multi-material, multi-laminate pouches is not consistent with Golden Design Rule number 6. So in other words, stop using a multi-material, multi-laminated pouch because you're not consistent with Golden Design Rule. So this is, something, like I said, we built in because it's consistent with where CPP is going. It's consistent with what PAC is doing. You heard Andrew say that that he and I do the training on the Golden Design Rules with the next course coming up in a few weeks. So, this is really important for people to understand, because a lot of the time the questions we get is, but I don't even know whether or not I'm consistent. What do I need to do? Well, here, let's tell you. There's your CO2 emissions for the package. It's 24.89 grams. And then per gram of package, because sometimes you want to compare packages, but it's really hard to compare. Let's use an extreme example. If you're using, for, say, dairy, a glass bottle versus an HDP bottle versus a polyethylene pouch, which is all you want to buy, by the way, because that's what Theo makes. So, it would give you that, and then you can compare it per gram of package and then also buy the package. So the EPR fees are down here. So that ranges, 1.54 cents for BC. The Canadian average is just based, it's assuming that your sales are equivalent to the population in the province. That's the only way we could do it for a Canadian number, but Ontario's 0.64 cents and it ranges up to 1.54 cents for that package. So that's it. So you can download it if you want, right? Or you can do it later. So I'm going to say, no, that's all we want to do for now. Now, so now what we're going to do is we want to now move this to just a mono structure. So rather than you having to start all over again, what you're going to do is, right, you go to the 3 dots over here, you say duplicate package, right? And we're going to edit it. So we're going to edit. So now it's not a multi-material, multi-laminated. Now it's a mono PE pouch, right, for strawberries. So Lucas and Theo got together and said, hey, we can do better than that. And I know they can, because they're both in plastic packaging. So this is a potential package. It is a replacement package. Now, the reason we have this is that one of the part of your score can be if you change packaging, say you move from think about coffee, went from steel cans to HDP tubs to pouches. Well, that's a replacement package, and there's a lot of light weighting. So part of your score is with respect to reduction. Now, in this case, it's the weight of the package is right. This was the original one, and it was 16 grams. So it's not going to get any credit for reduction. Typically, you don't see a reduction when you move from multi-material structures to monostructures. In fact, some people would suggest it's more than that, but I think we have Tempo on here, and they would scream at me if I said that, because I know they have come up with a replacement pouch in a monostructure that weighs no more than a multi-material structure. So kudos to them. So I'm not going to say that it weighs more. So we're going to save, right? And here again, you don't have to add a component because it's really the same thing, but we're going to edit the component, and we're going to change it from multi-material, multi-laminated to HDP mono material pouches, right? So you can have a choice between LDP and HDP. In this case, we're going to say it's an HDP pouch. So you change that, same weight, no recycled content, no fiber, no bio-based. It's still got the barrier layer in it, right? So what it is it's a HDP with a barrier layer and HDPE in it, right? So we save it. And believe it or not, that's all you need to do. Oh, I forgot to change the component thing. So this is now a mono PE pouch. So we'll change this. Mono PE. Okay. So save. And so you've got the new package, mono PE, mono. That's it. Believe it or not, we've now created our second package very, very quickly. And we could change it. Let's assume it's the same SKU for now, but you could change it and everything else, right? As well. You can just edit it. And so you create a score. Confirm all your information is correct. Yep, it's correct. So it moves to 45. Now, that's not a great move, but it is an improvement. So bear that in mind. Remember, the first one was 37. Still tells you to reduce your packaging weight, increase recycled content, increase the use of bio-based. But look, down here, your golden design rules, good work. These packaging materials conform to the golden design rules. So now you've overcome that big issue. Technically, this package is recyclable, right? Because mono PE structured films and pouches are a recyclable material for the most part across Canada. They can be collected, they can be recycled, and markets love mono PE. They would love to have this, right? Notice your packaging, your EPR fees are about the same. That's because in most provinces, there's no differentiation between multi-material structures and monostructures, so therefore the fees are about the same. But notice that your ECO2 emissions have gone down. Part of it is because you're using a different material with a lower original generation of GHG emissions for the production of the base package, but also the recycling rate's a little higher, so the CO2 emissions have gone down. So there we go. There's package number 2. And so that's great. Now we're going to go with, right? So we got that, and we're going to duplicate the package one more time. We're going to edit it. And we're going to edit the package, and it's a mono PE, not a copy. This is 50% recycled content. Right? So it's potential package. It's still replacing the original one. So this is the other alternative that we're going to put forward. So we're going to save that, right? So mono PE, 50% recycled content. So we're going to edit the component here. It's still HDP mono, but now we're going to change the recycled content to 50%, right? So that's the difference between the two packages. Still got the barrier layer in it, but it's a 50% recycled content, mono PE, 50% recycled content. And the reason you want to make sure you put the changes in along here is because your report card will actually show it. So if you wanted to compare report cards, all the information you need is right at the top. It tells you exactly what your package is. Right, and then so you can compare one to the other. I think Theo's going to show examples of where he's compared multiple packages and the report cards associated with them. So you save that, and that's it. We're done, right? Mono PE, 50% recycled content, create the score. Yes, we're done. Look at the huge improvement. We've gone from 37 to 45 to 153. So you can see that the model is very heavily weighted to recycled content. And that makes sense because it's a circularity model. If we're going to put a package into the marketplace, we want it to stay in the marketplace, and therefore it needs to be recycled. If it's going to be recycled, then it continues to go around and around. Therefore, it's going to get a higher score, circularity index, which is exactly what PIP360 is all about. You're still consistent with the golden design rules. You notice the EPR fees haven't changed at all because EPR is not modulated. There's no credit for recycled content anywhere in Canada. There's a couple provinces looking at it right now, but right now it's whether it's recycled content or not, it's still the same EPR fee, so you're not getting a credit there. But look at your GHG emissions. So for all of your companies that have got ESG goals of zero carbon, think about where we started and look where we are now at 15.73 grams or 0.98 grams per gram of package. It's a huge improvement. So when you look at it, you can see stepwise 37 to 45 to 153. ECO2 has dropped dramatically. EPR fees have stayed about the same. You're now meeting the golden design rules. This is a very much more circular package. So congratulations to those companies that are moving to this and are developing these packaging types. So that's it for me. I'm open to questions either. Andrew, I don't know if you want to take any questions now or if you want to take it in at the end. It's your call.
Yeah, thanks. First of all, thanks, Dan. And you know what we do? We have a couple of questions that have come through and they're good ones. And just while it's fresh, your presentation is fresh, why don't we tackle these and then we'll turn it over to Theo. So Dan, first up, we'll do these first two and then any others that come in, we'll hold till after Theo and Lucas. So Dan, with regards to the CO2e value, you were just speaking to this. Is that value only GHG for end of life of the package?
No, it's for the entire from generation of the original package. So extraction, virgin production. Of course, there's no use in there, but it includes transportation. It includes end of life. It's the full life cycle from production of the original package through end of life of the package.
Yeah, good question. Thanks, Cher. And second question from Paul, looking for clarification on bio-based here, Dan. So a point about the Canada Plastics Pact Pathways to Monomaterial Flexibles Guide suggests, at this point anyways, not moving to compostable flexible plastic packaging. So I think here it's just looking for a clarification on the in the summary page, the increase of the use of bio-based plastic. So I know what you're going to do here, Dan, but just clarifying.
Bio-based is not compostable necessarily. Yeah. Like the Sony water bottle, 30% of the bottle was made from biological sources, or is it 70%? I always get those numbers backwards. Anyhow, part of the bottle, pardon me?
30,
that's what I thought. Yeah, so 30% of the bottle was actually, well, we'll call it, I don't know if it was corn-based, but let's assume it was corn-based. So what it means is they make the ethanol into the ethylene to make polyethylene terephthalate, the PET part. So what they're doing is using corn to make the polyethylene portion. It's no different than using corn to make fuel, for example, right? Which is commonly done. So it's biologically sourced material to create the polyethylene portion or whatever the plastic is made out of. But it does not mean that the package is compostable. If you're going to score compostable, you can put it in, but to be honest, the only way you're going to get a score on it is if you choose certified compostable bio-based plastic, right? And it's a separate category in the list. Unfortunately, with 20 minutes, I didn't have time to go through the whole list. But we do have a category called certified compostable plastic, right? So PLA is your typical, everybody understands it as being bio-based plastic, but PLA honestly can be structured to be either recyclable or compostable. It all depends on the additives they put into it. So that's why, again, we had to move to certified compostable to get a composting score, because otherwise these claims of biodegradability or oxidogradability and everything, and oxidogradable, you're absolutely not allowed under the golden design rules. It's more of a European thing. You don't really see it in North America. But anyhow, yes, bio-based does not mean compostable, it means biologically sourced plastic that goes into the manufacturing of the recyclable plastic container.
Perfect. Thanks, Dan, and got a big thank you from Paul on that one. So now's the perfect time to turn it over to Theo Boven and then to Lucas Martinovic to give some perspective from people who are using the tool. So Theo, over to you.
Thanks, Andrew. So I'm just building on what Dan was showing. I'm going to just model 2 real-world examples, products out there today, and illustrate what happens if we try to make some improvements to the circularity. So the first one here is a cement bag, very common in construction industry today. There's millions of these used in North America every year. That's 30 kgs of Portland cement. Now the typical bag, and I showed it here at the bottom, is today is 2 plies of 80 craft paper, and in between them we put in a 0.5 mil high density polyethylene is typical for the moisture barrier. Portland cement needs a moisture barrier to protect it. The craft paper, as we know, just doesn't do the job for moisture barrier. Now using the tool, and if I just model the existing package, it scores 132, and you see the 82 grams of greenhouse gas and the EPR fees. So that's good information. It's a baseline. Now the craft paper has good collection recycling stream and is repulpable, but the minute you have to use the PE film with it, it now makes the bag no longer recyclable and it's destined for landfill. Now we have had solutions at Hood to separate the poly and the paper after use. We have designs for that. We can, but that allows us to put the paper in a recyclable stream, and actually where we can recycle poly, you can go in the poly stream, which is great. However, I think Dan can testify to this, end users in this case would be construction workers, not really apt to change their behaviors and separate them. And if you ever mixed concrete yourself, you know that workers typically put the bag on the ground and tear it open with their spade, their shovel, and then they shovel the concrete mix into a mixer. So ripping the bag really makes it impossible to separate the poly. So how to improve the score and still keep the moisture barrier? Well, the one way to do it is the structure right beside it, which is where we use 2 plies of paper. Only this time we put a water-soluble coating on the paper, which is acceptable to the repulping stream. So that would make the bag recyclable. In this case, we had to use a 90-gram paper with an 80-gram to make up for the structural strength that the polyethylene was providing, so to create the same strength, which make the bag a touch heavier. However, when we score that, we now get an improvement in score because we've now made the bag actually recyclable, and we've taken away the poly. And you also see the greenhouse gas drops a little bit. Now, had I stayed with 2 plies of 80-gram paper, the score would have improved because, as Dan mentioned, there's quite a penalty, or there's quite a factor reduced related to the weight of the bag. So that's just an example. And we've used this tool. I've used this tool to communicate to management and to customers, hey, this is sort of strategies you want to do. This is a good educational tool to educating management and our customers. Next slide, Lindsay. So this example is a little simpler, and it builds nicely on what Dan was also saying. This is a common 25 kg salt bag. This could be safety salt or ice melter or water conditioning salt. And the current bag is an all PE, which is good. And you can see when we model it on the first score of 53, that meets all the golden design rules. But the score is low, as Dan showed with the all PE pouch, because we're just working with virgin material PE here. And so what can we do to improve the score? Well, we're already monomaterial. The 2 obvious things would be to down gauge and reduce the amount of head space. But these bags have been in the market for 50 years, and we've done all that work already. They're quite optimized for gauge and head space. So, the big advantage here would be recycled content. And so I just stuck in what is very doable today. You can buy this bag with 30% PCR, and that just improves the circularity score to 118. So we basically double the circularity score, and we also reduce the greenhouse gas emissions by about 17%. And I just, Andrew, for the just two more examples of how the tool can be used and communicate circularity and sustainability strategies.
Yeah, excellent. So important, Theo, to get into the details and show how the tool can translate into these real world examples. Along those lines, I'm going to turn it over to Lucas for a few more examples. Lucas, over to you.
Thank you, Andrew. And so I guess we'll just hop right into things and talk a little bit about how PIP360, as Dan alluded to, as a circularity calculator, has been beneficial to us. So, I mean, going off the top, PIP360 to us has proven to be a great material reassurance tool, using real data to quantify how certain materials perform in the waste streams that they're being sold into. One of the major steps in order for the circular economy to work and to get closer to that vision of turning waste into resource, it's to do the best we can in making sure the feedstock that's going into our waste stream can or will be processed into valuable reusable materials. And this is where PIP360 can really be used to support in the packaging decision-making process quickly, clearly, and cost effectively. And a big thing for us is actually to use it in conjunction with LCAs. So that's something I definitely want to clarify, at least from our perspective. By no means do we see it as a replacement. And the addition of the WAR model definitely strengthens the output of the results. But I'm sure many on the call, such as us, do also utilize LCAs. But LCAs factor in many different components, and sometimes it's difficult to find the actionable items, whereas PIP360 really focuses on the material itself, which is core, I think, to the circular economy as a whole. Because we want to be, again, engineering packaging so that it can be recycled. You know, the way I like to put it is make new bottles out of old bottles. That's what we're working towards. And here we really have a great snapshot of how PIP360 illustrates us through that pathway. Benchmark where we are today, but validate, or where I get to the material reassurance tool, reassure us that directionally where we're headed is in a circular direction. So right here is a great easy to digest example where we're looking at I believe it was a 50-gram rigid HDPE bottle. And you can see when you take a virgin HDPE natural bottle, you get a score of 88. Now, it may not seem like a great score versus 360, but again, this is our benchmark, how the material performs today. I mean, one of the benefits of natural, particularly without any colorant, I mean to say, rigid HDPE, you know, if we look at the United States, for example, there are 378 MRFs, and 100% of those MRFs accept rigid HDPE, and it's very much the same in Canada. And we can kind of see how PIP360 helps quantify, take the subjectivity out of it, and, you know, walk us through that path. So, you know, we go from 100% virgin to 50% PCR. We see that significant jump. And then finally, when we introduce 100% PCR, which is possible today, but by no means what I recommend today, just because we don't want to be consuming more than is being collected, I guess is a way to look at it. But we have that reassurance that we are using a circular material. Lindsay, if you want to go to the next slide. So very much here, so we flip to another material that we work with here, which is rigid PET. And I wanted to illustrate kind of how PIP360 helps tell the story of how one move directionally may be more circular than another. So for example, we've gone from natural HDPE, where if we were to go to natural PET, another very highly recyclable resource, which would score around a 91. But interestingly enough, if you introduce colored PET, there is, I won't say no, but very few end-of-life markets. And here's a great example of how PIP360 quantifies and illustrates that for us, where we can see going from a 91, which is what clear PET would be, to now 36, because you cannot circulate the material. So just help quantifying that story. Or let's say we're trying to decide between lightweighting 20% or introducing 20% PCR. If we lightweight a PET clear container, we would go from a 91 to a 109. Or if we want to introduce 20% PCR, but keep the same weight, we would go from a 91 to a 134. So we can kind of see how PIP360 rewards anything that directly contributes to the circular economy. One of the last points I like to make whenever I talk about this is the new plastics economy isn't about using, in my opinion, the most PCR. It's about more brands introducing some PCR into their products and funding the shift of these new innovative sorting and recycling streams to really find that equilibrium between sorting and usage quantities. And that's really so mandates are never demanding more post-consumer resin than is available. But as we can see here, here's a tool now available in the market that really helps us quantify that pathway as we move forward. And then last slide, Lindsay. I won't speak much to this here, but here's just an example as you run different packaging assessments, how it can be really valuable internally, also like externally to a degree with your customers, just to understand how different materials behave. Again, as we're talking about at the top, PET black, we can see a 36, which is on par with like a multi-material non-recyclable pouch versus, we can see with black HDPE, slightly larger market. And then we see growth, polypropylene, slightly more accepted. Then we see colored HDPE, which is sought after, and the tool helps quantify that for us, and also reflects how each of these materials perform from an end-of-life perspective by providing the EPR fees. So again, I'm not going to run through this whole chart, but it was just to kind of give a snapshot of how valuable the tool can be in the packaging decision-making process. So thank you, Andrew.
Thank you, Lucas. Wonderful. And if all presenters could, including me, come back on so that we can respond to our audience questions. There's Dan. Okay,
I've responded to a couple directly in the chat, Andrew. Just
well, yeah, not the chat though, so the audience can't see that. So we'll.
Oh, sorry, Q&A.
That's okay. All good. So on that, Dan, I can just recap for the bigger group. So good question about data, and just do we update the background data, and is that data third party validated in any way? So Dan, as you said, you'd already fielded that, but if for the benefit of the bigger group, your thoughts on that?
On the background data?
Yeah, so
it's public sources. You can get the data yourselves if you look up Recycle BC, Multi-Material Stewardship Western, Multi-Material Stewardship Manitoba, Stewardship Ontario, and Eco-Entreprise Quebec. The data are included in their annual reports. It gives us recycling rates and also EPR fees. So it's nothing that we're making up. Now, I'll be fair though, some of the material streams, if you look at EPR fees, they're not assigned at the 74 distinct categories that are 79, sorry, that we have in terms of the material list included in PIP360, but it's reasonable. The extrapolations to the material list that we have are quite reasonable. So separating box, two different types of box board, we just use the box board EPR fee. We didn't make any stretches, and respecting that the EPR fees are approximate, and particularly for plastics, for example, may vary depending on the reporting requirements. So in some provinces, extra pieces of a container that are less than 5% of the weight typically don't get reported. You just report the base bottle to the total weight in total bottle, including cap and label, for example. So we've done our best to provide it's good directionality with respect to the data that we have in the model, but it is based on provided sources, public sources.
Okay, thank you, Dan, and I hope to whomever asked that question, that's helpful. Now we got a question coming in about sort of good and bad scores. What makes for a good score versus a bad score? You know, it's out of 360, so is, you know, 180 pretty good? And I know, Dan, you have thoughts on this, but I'm going to put this first, Theo. When you've been using the tool, how do you interpret the score versus kind of good and bad, or do you? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I try to avoid labeling a score good or poor or bad or excellent. Um, the choice of a package doesn't really start with sustainability. I know that sounds a little strong. Sustainability is a big factor, but there's many other factors why somebody chooses a particular package. So I would say, okay, let's get the right package for the customer, the right cost, the right product protection, the right marketing appeal. There's a number of factors that go into choosing a package, and then how can we make it more sustainable? How can we improve the sustainability? And maybe that does result in a totally different package, but yeah, I would say let's improve. The score is to, okay, how do we improve? It's pathways to improvement, pathways to innovation. That's why we labeled it that way. Let's improve our scores for the right package for the customer, if that makes sense to you, Andrew.
Well, it sure does. And it makes me think of the word you used earlier in your presentation of it's a baseline. I think you're referring to the CO2e emissions. You know, it just gives you a starting point from which one can then compare different versions of a same package or even with a different package. So thanks for that. I think that is consistent with the way we think about it at PAC as well. Okay, next up, here's a question. I think, Dan, I'll go to you with this. It's about recycled content and basically how does the tool define or contemplate recycled content? And the follow-up question is it generally considering mechanically recycled PCR versus post-industrial? So
okay, I'll be honest. The model doesn't know what you're putting in, right? So if you want to put in post-industrial, the model's not going to say to you, hey, is your recycled content post-industrial or post PCR, post residential, post-consumer? If I was to follow the strict proposed regulation under Canadian law, post-industrial is not going to count. My personal opinion is post-industrial should count, because what are they going to do? Throw it away? It doesn't make sense to me not to include it. But in terms of PIP360, it just asks for recycled content, whether the recycled content is post-industrial, post-residential, post-consumer, or mechanically or chemically derived. Right now, we're not at that level where we can differentiate. Maybe in version 3, we might start asking, particularly if the federal government does come out and say, we're not going to give you any credit for post-industrial recycled content, then we might have to adjust it so we can adjust the scores accordingly. But from a strictly circularity standpoint, I would hate to see the post-industrial material thrown in the garbage simply because you're not getting credit for it. So,
yeah, fair enough. Thanks, Dan. So, Dan, I'll stay with you with this question, which is, are the scores in GHG emissions only meant to support internal decision making, or is the intent to share them publicly? Yeah.
Whether you choose to share it publicly, that's up to you as the user of the model. We do not have we have never purported that this is a B2C model. Rather, this is more of a internal or even B2B. So if you have a company that says, hey, we got this new package and we want to see it, there are companies out there that are starting to ask suppliers to provide their PIP360 score so that they can do a relative comparison between packaging. You heard Theo. It isn't necessarily that a 38's worse than, or worse than another package. It all depends on what the purpose of the package is and what you're doing with it, which is what I actually wrote in as well, right? You're not going to compare a corrugated box to a plastic pouch because you can't use a corrugated box or something you would stick in a plastic pouch or vice versa. So comparing a 330 for OCC to a 38 or even a 153 for a plastic pouch doesn't really make sense, right? But comparing one plastic pouch to another, again, something Theo suggested, that's a good thing. So what you want to present publicly is up to you. The GHG emission estimates are based on the Moore model, again, applied. They don't have it for 79 categories. I had to use some, interpretation of, okay, well, this has got to be under this category. And sometimes I had to blend the numbers. So for example, a PE pouch, I blended the PET virgin production GHG emissions with the PE, and knowing that a typical pouch is about whatever it is, I can't remember what numbers I used in the model, but whatever it is, then, I took part of each. So it's as close as it can be reasonably done without running the Moore model yourself. But again, you would have to make the same interpretation if you ran the model directly, the Moore model. So we're doing our best to give you discrete elements across each of the packaging material types, so that you can use it. Again, as has been stressed, it's for comparison purposes, one package to another.
Yeah, exactly, Dan. For comparison purposes, I'm meant to try to save you time by having done some homework for you. Lucas, if I could go to you just quickly on this topic of internal versus external, how have you used the information at Silgan?
Yeah, no, great question. From an internal side, I think it's been very powerful to internal resources, whether it be commercial or operational, and just understanding and just having it put in front of you how different materials behave from an end-of-life perspective, or a circular perspective, I think I should say. So that's somewhere where PIP360 has been very valuable internally. And I think that definitely translated externally, again, just to lay our cards on the table as we're looking to make more data-driven decisions versus subjective. PIP360 has definitely lent a helping hand in laying our cards on the table. We hope everything moves in the right direction, and it's not always the case. And the results help us react and behave accordingly, like I said, very often in conjunction with LCAs to really tell the full story.
Got it. And Lucas, just while I've got you, in terms of who alongside you has been, using the tool and connecting with the tool, either internally or externally, who are some of the people and the positions you see as where the tool is most relevant? Like who can connect with this tool best?
Yeah. Yep. I find very often the best conversations are when we're working with our customers, specifically on the procurement side or the packaging engineering side, where we're in the early development of a new package or a package we're considering. And, we're laying everything on the table. Are we going PET? Are we going polypro? Are we going HDPE? And then take it from there. Are we going to lightweight? Or are we going to add PCR? What are our goals? Where are we trying to head? But I find those areas are always the most meaningful, that translate to action. But no matter who I find we speak to, it's always very well received, because I think it very easily paints a complicated picture.
Theo, when you hear Lucas describe that, does that resonate with you? Procurement, packaging, engineers kind of earlier in the process, or have you had a bit of a different experience?
Yeah, no, that I think there's good potential for that. It makes a lot of sense. But yeah, my experience is more just as a communication tool and a decision tool. But it certainly, from a procurement point of view, if somebody wants to compare packages or preparing a request for proposal for a packaging contract, they could add scores as part of their analysis.
Got it. Okay, thank you. And so as we near the top of the hour, and we don't like to go right to the top of the hour, we want to give you a minute or two to breathe before your next meeting. Dan and I have some kind of breaking news here from PAC CEO Jim Downham on the topic of cost. So, frequently people who are interested in the tool say, sounds good, how much is the tool? And so we want to share with you that the cost for PIP360 for PAC members is $2,500 for unlimited use for a year. So for 2024, $2,500, use it to your heart's content. For non-members, the price is $37.50. The breaking news part of what I want to share with you right now is that PAC is offering a kind of, call it a webinar special. So if you're on the webinar now, you're interested and you want to go for it, then Jim is offering a annual license for 2024 for $2,000. So that's $500 less than the normal rate. If you can contact him by 5 p.m. tomorrow, so November 17th. So you got a day to think it over, and then and so please, if you're interested, regardless if it's today, tomorrow, or next week, please reach out to Jim Downham directly. So that's PAC Global's CEO, and you can get contact information if you don't already have it for Jim from any of the PAC team members. So with that said, I hope you saw the poll that came up that Lindsay put up on the screen a couple of minutes ago. And I'm just going to double check the Q&A. Aha. So for a last question, will there be a recording available? So the answer is yes. Lindsay, I believe I'm correct in saying yes, there will be a recording available. So Randy, fear not that you've missed a little bit of the early part of the demo. So with that said, I'm just going to double check. I don't see other questions coming through right now. So I want to thank colleague Dan Lance for doing an in-depth demo on version 2 of PIP360. And Theo Bovin and Lucas Martinovich, again, Dan said it off the top, but we're really grateful for the fact that you've not only you've used the tool, but you've been willing to speak candidly about this is how it's gone, and this is how it's working for us. So we appreciate it. So to our audience today, thank you very much for making time to join us for our webinar. Again, if you're interested in following up on the tool, please reach out directly to Jim Downham. He'd be delighted to hear from you. And then as well, if you have specific technical questions about the tool, please reach out to Dan or to me. We welcome your questions. So with that said, we wish you all the best for the rest of your day, the rest of your week, and look forward to seeing you again soon. Thanks very much. Bye for now.
Thank you, everyone. Bye now.